wanna say, be who you wanna be. Come speak your mind, be you. Get ready for the Nakid Truth. Dr. Kelly bringing it to you right on time. No half stepping. She's bringing you the Nakid Truth.
All right, all right. That is right. We are bringing you the Nakid Truth. Very excited about our topic tonight. Team Rock, are you in the house?
We
Yes,
are here.
we are.
Yes.
Are we not excited to be on the air live?
Yes, we
Excited.
are.
RMC
Absolutely.
on air.
Yes.
You know, we're always excited to be together, but we're extra excited when we have our resident expert, Mr. Hassani Pettiford, who's written several books and been in several reality shows. He's a man with a plan, and he is Charity,
My
brother
from another mother.
Yes. See, Hassani, she's getting used to it. You know, she's fighting it, but she likes it.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing phenomenal and excited to be on the air once again. I miss this like every single week. It's just like a craving I get. When is the show gonna come back?
I know, I feel the same way, and we're getting we're getting into our rhythm. So all of our faithful listeners and fans out there, stay tuned. We got a lot of good stuff coming. Today's show is going to be wonderful. We have a special guest that is going to come on and enlighten us on the subject, and then of course the team is going to discuss this issue that we'll name briefly. But next week we have Pastor Tim from Preachers of Detroit in, and it's going to be really, really good. You got to tune in. He has a special story that I think you'll find interesting. Don't you think so, Anthony?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have a wonderful time. But today, before we start talking about our hot topic, we do want to just celebrate the life of B.B. King.
Wow.
I mean, the infamous B.B. King, the blues man himself, been around forever. It's amazing when you think about black artists like him. I mean, I don't know if we would ever see people of his likes again.
It was, B.B. King was he just changed the lives of so many people, the way he played and what he did and how he lived his life and so forth. He inspired so many people. You hear, whether it be blues, rock, whatever, they were all inspired by B.B. King. Yeah.
I think it's amazing how someone's gift that's not necessarily talking can really, and like you said, inspire lives. Rather, so we have so many people who can talk and who, inspire that way. But I think it's awesome where their gift, whether it's music or dance, can move people.
Right. Instruments. Instruments can speak. And I was just thinking, he was 89 when he passed away, just about to turn 90. And I think a lot of the reason his life was prolonged was because he would, everything was through that instrument. He would release his stress probably through that instrument. He would release his anger through that instrument. So I think that it created him, afforded him a long life. So Hassani, what do you think about B.B. King? What's your memories of him?
I think it's a loss because, even though he was into blues, which is an American type of music, he had an international influence, all over the world. I mean, some of my greatest icons, if you will, like Muhammad Ali, who I was big on, and I would watch all the documentaries. Muhammad Ali had a special relationship with him and used a lot of his music, as a major influence in his life, which introduced me to his music. So I think it's going to be a major loss, but, he'll live through his music.
I just think about my grandfather sitting in his living room by himself, and we would come in for the holidays or whatever. We were excited about seeing Granddad, and he's listening to "The Thrill Is Gone," tapping his foot. I mean, and it created this environment where they were just a bunch of thinkers. They would be listening to the song by themselves, just deeply in thought. So we're gonna miss him. We celebrate his life and all that he contributed to black culture, to the music culture, and hopefully we'll have one. He's like a Miles Davis. He's like a a John Coltrane. I mean, we need to see these people, and hopefully the millennials will produce a person of that nature. So, and thinking about millennials, it opens up our discussion to why we're here, Anthony.
Can I just mention there was another loss, not as grave as B.B. King, but the Los Angeles Clippers.
Oh man, was that a loss or was that? I don't even know if we can credit that as a loss.
Believe me,
I think that was stupidity.
No,
I don't even know if that's
no,
I mean, how do you have the people in your home and you're 17, 19 points up and you lose the?
Come on, you're not a fan. You're talking as somebody who's truly a fan of the Clippers. I wanted them to go on. They were so close to being
Yeah,
in
I
the
did
Western's
too.
Conference.
I did
Well, I
too.
did too. Oh, you're
No, you
trying to say
didn't.
I'm
No,
a
you-
fan?
oh, no,
okay,
come on.
okay.
I was about to say,
I
tell
am a
the
Portland
truth.
Trailblazer fan
You
first.
just got out of church.
Because
Please tell the
Alan
truth.
Crabb, AC number 23.
Oh,
but you know,
Yeah.
they're not in it anymore. So of course, LA is gonna be my second
Houston
love.
Rockets took care of them, and
Gosh,
now-
that's hurt to
I
say.
just want to know what happened. Like, did they get so confident off that one really
I
really
think
good
so.
win, and they just felt like it could carry them through? Like, I just don't
I think so,
understand how
Charity.
you let it
No.
go.
I think it
Like,
just comes
they've
down
been
to-
wanting it for so long.
they're the Clippers. We got to remember.
Yeah, that's
they're
true.
the-
That's true. Something carried them
I
that
mean,
far.
this is a Laker
That far.
town, so they are the Clippers, so they went back to what they knew. So
Okay,
Wait a minute.
so
Can I ask a
yes,
question? Can I ask a question?
East Coast, you can speak.
mean You diehard Laker fans were secretly rooting for the Clippers?
listen, I'm on both sides.
See,
I
okay.
That's them assigning.
I
the
will
Lakers are the
admit-
big brother. The Clippers are the little brother. They've been getting smacked around
I
all
will
this time,
admit-
and I thought it was the Clippers' time.
I've always been a Los Angeles
fan.
fan.
Oh,
Now,
there you go.
whoever,
Clarify it.
right, I'm a Los Angeles girl. Now, I have had a sweet spot for the Clippers because they've always been the underdog. So I really thought that they were going to pull through this year, and they let me down.
Well, I'm
They
a
let me
fair
down.
weather fan. I'm gonna tell you, and I'm out. I'm out. Okay, Clippers, you should have won that game, and you embarrassed us. We're done. Okay.
Let's move on. Then.
So you know what? But I do think that Curry.
Oh, Steph
He's
Curry.
gonna
go-
kill him.
yeah,
He's
Golden
gonna kill him.
State,
They should have never gave him an opportunity. He's like, yes, bring him on.
And he loves
Bring him on.
Jesus.
And he loves Jesus. But guess what? The other thing I was going to tell you about the Clippers is that the team that they just beat. What is it? I can't. San Antonio,
Houston Rockets.
Houston Rockets. They made a definite statement that God had gotten them there, and so you really see who's believing what when it comes down to
Okay.
the rubber meets the road. So maybe that was it.
All right.
I
got you.
All right. So we're going to move on. So we're going to talk about why millennials are leaving the church.
Wow.
This article hit CNN last week like it was the hugest news flash of the century. And it said that, millennials are leaving the church, and that Christians used to be like in the percentage of like the high 80s, and now it's like 70% of people go to church and call themselves Christians. So we want to talk about this because the millennials are the age group of 30 and under, and they're doing different things. They're making their own decisions. They're creating a dilemma for the world and the church.
Right,
So Hassani, when you saw this article, what did you think? I mean, did you think, that's what I see, or did you think, no, I don't think so, or did you think it sounds about right?
It really does sound about right, because if you notice over the last decade or so, we've become more liberal as a nation. And being more liberal means that you're not as conservative, particularly in issues of faith and religion. So when it comes to abortion, homosexuality, family values, things of that nature, people are having a different take than the message that the church has been preaching for quite some time. So when you're open to people living any type of way that they want, and the church is perceived as dogmatic in its approach, yes, you're going to have a lot of millennials, and not just millennials. We're seeing people of all ages begin to shift their positions on faith and religion, and it's impacting us in a major way.
Yeah, it really is, and you're absolutely right. But how? My question is how do we get to a point where we have differences on values and opinions on biblical perspective when these kids or these young adults' parents have had the same belief system that their parents had? I mean, how do they differ so greatly?
Well, to me, there's two big things that we've got to recognize. Well, actually three. Number one, for me, the church, in many respects, has been silent on many social issues. And there's no uniformity amongst the church anymore. There are tens of thousands of Christian denominations throughout the world. And each denomination and each organization believes something different. So there's so much confusion in terms of what we believe within the church. But in addition to that, you have legal changes. If you look at our laws, certain things are permitted that weren't permitted before. And there's certain people who can violate laws by speaking their truth. So if you speak against certain things, homosexuality, things of that nature, you can be penalized, you can be thrown in jail, you can be reprimanded, receive all types of fines. And so it's in essence silencing the church. The other thing about it is the media influence. Really, we've been sensationalized with so many images of what the world considers to be politically correct or right, and it's confusing us in terms of what our position should be. So I think all of those three things combined is impacting the amount of influence and interest that people have concerning church.
A Charity?
Now, I also think too, because there aren't necessarily as many millennials who attract more millennials like there was with our parents. Like, everybody was Christian and everybody believed the same thing. So as like Hassani said, we have media and social media trying to tell us what to believe in. I don't think there's as many young Christians who do believe kind of at the forefront.
So no leaders, no role models.
It's not a strong population of those leaders and role models.
And there is strength in numbers.
Right.
So if you had a large percentage of people who already believed that and had that foundation, then you could recruit the people who didn't and stand against those who came against you.
Right.
But it's almost like you're by yourself,
right,
and you're trying to do it with a small army.
Right.
Okay, well that makes sense. We're gonna bring on our another expert that we've invited to come on the program, and he's going to join in the conversation so we get a different perspective, because of course you have Team Rock all the time. We have a great perspective, but we want to bring in a perspective of a pastor, Pastor Jason Moody. He's 37 years old, out of Clinton, New Jersey, with the Christ Covenant Center, Christ Covenant Christian Center. I think that's what it is. Let's ask him. Pastor Moody, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Did I say your church name right? I'm sorry.
Christ Covenant Church.
Christ Covenant Church, and it was because I wrote it crazy.
You see what you did?
I
you
had
took
the
the
Christian
church out and you called it Center.
Yes.
That is the new church name. No more church. They are centers now.
Yes, because
so
they offer
the culture,
multiple
that's
things.
The movement.
Yes, yes, and you're right. Actually, it is so true. So the question to you is, assuming that you're a pastor and you're probably experiencing this firsthand, what is the age group for your church? What would you say the age frame is?
Well, right now my church is predominantly my age group, between the ages of 25 and 40. We are a smaller congregation.
Okay.
Existing roughly 7 months now.
Oh, wonderful.
In the North Jersey area, Clifton, New Jersey. But I've had an opportunity to travel throughout the East Coast, Midwest. Even tonight, speaking about this one particular topic, one of the things that I've ascribed to, and in conversations that I've had others to kind of, when I brought it up or mentioned it, to like kind of give the nod or the go ahead as to say, you know what, you may have a point. In regards to the millennials, number one, there's a survey out by the Barna Group, George Barna,
yes,
who's a church statistician.
Right.
18 to 30, that particular group. It's cross denomination in terms of Catholics, Pentecostals, Jehovah's Witness. Like, it's once you hit the 17 mark, 70%, as high as 70% leave the church. Not necessarily God, but leave the church. And there are many things that influence that particular decision. But one of the main decisions is what someone was mentioning earlier. The traditionalists. It was a very strong Christian-based group. I believe that's where, most of them would say that that's why America was predominantly a Christian country. But for the most part, the traditionalists were somewhere around the early 1900s to the 30s.
Okay.
They went to church. It was a part of their culture. It was a part of the behavior and what they did. And so in that, after that, you had another group that came along somewhere around the late 40s, early 50s. I believe they called those the baby boomers.
Okay.
And the baby boomers, for the most part, they went to church all the time because their parents, that was the culture. That's what they did. They went to church all the time.
Right.
And so in that, the baby boomers, kind of started having Generation X. And so in Generation X, you're talking about the early 70s, it was still a strong culture But that particular group kind of felt like, you know what? My parents had me in church all the time. And you know what? I don't know if I'm still in church. And so when they had their kids, it started becoming an option for their kids to go to church.
Yeah,
And this was
that's the
before
problem.
the kid actually became of age to make their own decisions before 18. So you're talking about someone 8 or 9 years old when you're normally in church, now having an option to go to church. And so therefore, when the next group comes along and they birth kids and their parents had the option to go to church, what do you think the next group is going to do? Not go to church at all.
Right.
So therefore, you have a generation of young people that are growing up that don't know God, don't know the Bible, even though they may say they're Christian.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Hassani, what do you think about that? What's your thoughts on that? Is that the actual stages that we've just come to a point where the generation before the current generation just did not emphasize the need to go to church, didn't make their kids go to church, therefore they made their choice not to. There's no real interest, and we're trying to create interest, and that's the problem.
Yes, I think that's correct. And I think a couple of things are happening. Like, if I just can speak personally to me,
yes.
When I grew up, I was in church like every Sunday afternoon, and then it was a prayer meeting. So church was very, very important. But at that time, we were getting the word. It seems like there's been such a shift from talking about the actual word of God to just giving life principles. So you have a lot of mature believers who eat meat, yep, who are now involved in churches, and all they're getting is milk. And so they're losing their desire to go to a church because their level of understanding and knowledge far exceeds what's being done in that particular congregation. And it's kind of hard to find churches that meet the level that they're on as seasoned Christians. And so they're pulling their children from those churches and possibly teaching them on their own, or just not going to church at all.
So you believe that the church is dumbing down?
Say that again?
The church is dumbing the lessons down?
Absolutely. They're
wow.
Unfortunately, you have a lot of churches dumbing the word down to accommodate visitors as a way of not offending. So now the approach is, I don't want to get in your business. I don't want to get in your bedroom. I don't want to get in your life. So let's teach cute principles to amass more people, but the word has been diluted. And I'm not saying that we should be dogmatic in our approach and everything should be heaven and hell and fire and brimstone, but I just think that there's no sound teaching amongst many churches, particularly in the South where I am.
Wow, that's deep. Charity, you, as a millennial yourself, do you see that in your church? Do you see that in other churches when you visit? Do you hear that from your peers? How would you respond?
I do definitely hear that. And I think we'll see. I think what churches are trying to do is with millennials, because they're going through a lot. Actually, millennials go through some stuff. Just in general, I'm sure every generation goes through things, and I feel like they're trying to appeal to the heart and trying to just lure them in. And so I agree with Hassani. Like, every time I visit a church, whether their praise and worship is awesome, whether whatever it is great, I will always say, yeah, that was good, but it's not like Crenshaw,
what you're getting,
what I'm used to. Mm-hmm. Just because we do get that real good meat, that fatty steak that's just good word. And so I do see that. And so I have conversations with people, and I said there are some pastors for everybody, especially the newer Christians. They may need that emotional appeal because they don't really know the word. So coming at them with the word may be like too much.
Or they may be bored because they don't understand
it. So I do think, and then too, I think that comes with discipleship. Like, rather than just filling up your church and saying I have all these people, like, okay, you've been here for so long, it seems like you get the basic principles. Now let's move you up to something a little bit heavier.
Right. So it's kind of step it up and show the steps and help the people understand how they can progress.
Right.
And yeah, right. So now, Anthony, do you feel that we should be catering to the millennials if they're saying that these people are on their couch watching church with their iPad?
We need to really reach out. We need to meet them where they are. So that doesn't mean that what was it? Was it Paul that said, "Be all things to all men to win some"? Yes. So I think we need to meet them where they are, but also you've got to be careful that you don't go down that slope, that you're pulling them up and not necessarily going down to the sense where
to their
you're
level.
compromising yourself, because
Right.
that can happen as well. So
Right.
there's got to be a balance. I think sometimes churches get caught up in so traditional, and we did this and that, and somebody might come in and say, hey, I want somebody to come in who's a little bit out there. You know, when Kirk Franklin came out, he was doing something a little different with his music, and people were like, oh, you know, but they were doing that to the Winans, and they were doing that. Every generation has somebody who comes out, and the church is like, oh, we don't want that, and then
Right. Then they release, let
so
their guards down.
why are we up? Why are we fighting against it? Why don't we kind of embrace it and figure out how can we use this? If this is what the young people are doing now, how can we use this to reach more?
Okay, so Pastor Moody, some people would say, yeah, but now I'm going to church and it seems like I'm going to a concert, because, now we have to have the music and it has to have the lights, the flashing lights. You have to have praise dancers or hip-hop dancers. You got to have Hip-Hop Sunday and, all these things to attract the millennials. And it distracts from the core message which we believe the churches are supposed to give. So as a pastor, what do you say about that? Do you say that that's good? You say that that's bad? What do you say?
I think you have to know the DNA of your church. I think you have to know what you're called to do and who you're called to minister to. Because too many churches are doing things outside of what they're called to do, and they're losing their identity, which is creating a bigger problem, just in the larger scope of everything.
That is so true.
Again, it's definitely what someone said, to reach them where they are, but then also know the identity of your church. And if it's something that's outside of the scope of what the leader can bring, then he may need to, maybe partner up with an organization or something within the community or within the church faith or with a faith-based organization that can, manage or maintain that area.
Now,
Because,
go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Now, Hassani, Pastor Moody brings out a good point, and he's saying that you have to know, where you're called. You have to understand, what your calling is. Do you think that some pastors go outside their calling and they're just trying to bring in the numbers and they're trying to increase the offerings, so they want to make sure that they, are everything to all people, instead of, hey, I'm called, my ministry is called to minister to those people in their 40s and to 60s, and I'm not called to do the 20s and 30s. I don't even need to do that. I'm not gonna be ministering to the millennials, or my message is on faith. So whoever wants to come hear faith, that's what we're gonna do. I'm called to do, minister salvation. So, or like for instance, a lot of people, accuse Joel Osteen of being, kind of fluffy because he's a motivator. Well, if that's what he's called to do and he stays in that lane, can you blame him?
Well, my position is, and I'm not a pastor, so I guess I'm speaking out of turn or just giving my opinion. I think everybody brings the essence of who they are to their ministry. So for instance, as you know, I'm big on family and relationships. So if I became a pastor, I would naturally bring that into the equation, much like faith or finances, and
Right.
all of that to me is a good thing. However, I still think that pastors should stick to the central foundation and the core of the word. Like, it should be a well-balanced, holistic word in addition to their special niche. That way, I think that you're building people up, the whole man of that individual, you're building them up. So the fact that you have some that are so far to the left or so far to the right, and everything's about one thing, they're not getting a well-balanced word. That's one issue. The other issue is, I don't know if anybody's mentioned it, but the big elephant in the room for me is the level of hypocrisy that's in the church. And unfortunately, there's so much scandal every single day from the pulpit to the pews that is really desensitizing people's understanding of the power and potency of the church. And they're being so offended by it, they're either choosing not to enter into those doors, or if they belong to the church, they're choosing to leave the church altogether.
So are you, because we had a speaker today at Quinto Christian Center, and the speaker was just encouraging people to go back to the premise of love and what love can do in terms of what God did for us. And that means, being open to those people who may not look like you, act like you, may not come from the same background, but still need the same love. still need the same Jesus. So are you saying the hypocrisy to the point where we're judging people and they don't feel comfortable coming into church with their baggage?
Well, I think I definitely think that's one area. And you know what? When people say love, to me, that's a trigger word, because from my experience, people who are very liberal in their approach only say, oh, all we need to focus on is love. I think the balance of God speaks of law and love. You can teach the law in a loving way that doesn't condemn and repudiate and reprove people. I think, unfortunately, we haven't learned that sweet spot or that fine balance to be able to do both.
Well, I think there's two parts to that. One, when Hassan was saying law and love, first of all, people need to understand the real definition of love, because the real definition of love includes correction. So if you're really, really loving somebody, like Hassan said, you'll do the correction in a loving manner.
Yes.
And I think people have strayed away from that part of the love to only have the emotional appeal of love, and that's completely different.
That's great.
And then the other thing too is hypocrisy, not just in terms of loving people, but hypocrisy within how we act as Christians. Millennials say they're Christian, but yet what they say isn't matching what they do. So new Christians look and say, well, I'm confused. If you're supposed to be a Christian, then why
are you having sex?
Why are you doing this?
Drinking?
Or why are you doing that? And so they're like, okay, so if you're lying in front of my face, or if your life doesn't match what
why
you
am
say,
I following
then
you
why
or
would I
believing
do
you?
that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so I have that's a big thing for me, is because I want, the young adults to match what they're saying, because someone is always watching, and I think people don't realize that someone is always watching.
Okay, so Charity, if that's the point, is it hard? I mean, you're a young adult. Is it that it's just very difficult to live the life, that they don't find it easy?
Well, it depends on their background. If they're used to something, then it may be, difficult for them. Or it could just be not appealing to them. Or they may not have a group of people who they can fellowship with, and who they can see, wow, like I can be, cool, but still live righteously and live for God. And so I think, and that's what I was saying, the more millennials see the true identity of what a Christian looks like,
the more they'll be
attracted to it and accepted of it.
I think that's a great point that you bring up, because I was sitting here thinking that, again, like the generation before us, they concentrated so much on the outer appearance that there was a lot of turmoil and things happening inside, to the point where they did come off hypocritical, or they were hypocritical, or they are hypocritical, because what's outside doesn't reflect what's actually going on. So the issues and things never really get dealt with, versus a generation where there's no filter. This is who we are, and this is what we do.
Right.
And so accept me as I am or not.
Right.
And if you can't accept me as I am, then I won't come to your church.
And I think our millennials have really taken this quote of God can't, or only God can judge me.
Right, and they use it, and it's like reverse hypocriticism.
I'm gonna need you to lay off that, okay?
Right.
You're taking this way out of context.
Right, and it's reverse hypocriticism, because you're saying that this person is a hypocrite, yet you're actually living a life as a hypocrite because you make an excuse for it.
And then, real quick, another thing is the grace message is preached so much that it's misunderstood, and they feel, well, if God is going to give me all this grace, I can keep living how I'm living. But see, they don't continue the scriptures where it says you're not supposed to live within grace. I paraphrased it, but you're not supposed to live off of grace.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the
wages of sin is death. It's just very profound things that expand the grace message.
Right.
And sometimes, because it sounds appealing and it brings people in the door, we just say enough to get them excited. But we, like you said, love is about correction as well. I like that point you made, Charity. Okay, so we have another pastor on the line who's going to chime in, and he actually is I don't know if we would call him a millennial anymore, but he's probably laughing now. But he's still close to it. But he actually pioneered some of the hip hop movements in the church. So, Pastor DeAndre Burns, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
How are you?
Hey.
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I know you're not laughing. I mean, you're still millennial, but you're kind of on your way to another level.
Yeah, I'm on the other end.
Yeah. So, Anthony, why are you making fun? You know we are on the other side. So I just said he's coming out of it. And the reason why I wanted to express everyone's ages is so that the people will know who we're talking about and who's chiming in. So what are your thoughts now that you're in the South now, right? And, and you're seeing, you know, all kinds of, I'm sure you're still working with the millennials and trying to get them into the church. What is your hardest task in doing that?
Well, you know, as far as being on the other end as a millennial, it's good to be, you know, old enough to understand how it was, but old enough to understand, you know, where I'm going. But one of the issues, and I think it's the biggest issue that's facing the church, and the reason why I feel like millennials are leaving, is that there's no personal connection with leadership when it comes to the youth. Yes. See, we're in a time where the youth want to know the life of the person that's ministering to them. And when you're dealing with like a larger church, at times it's impossible for the head person to have a personal relationship with everyone.
Right.
Due to that fact, it's like if I don't know you, there's no way you can get in my business and try to tell me what it is I'm supposed to do or not supposed to do, because you don't personally know my situation. You don't know what I'm going through.
Right.
And, you know, so discipleship, I feel like, is the major issue. And I feel like that's a really, really bad issue that the church, especially the black church, is facing nowadays.
Yes. Well, now, the question, does the pastor or the head pastor have to be the person who does the discipling, or can it be that there's something set up like a system of cell meetings where you can have one person who's the leader and who's the disciple or mentor for a group of people? Could that suffice, or does it have to be the head pastor?
It's important that there are groups, which there really isn't many. You know, I'm not trying to like say everybody in general, but there's a lot of, especially black churches. I've seen some white churches with small cell groups.
Yeah, right.
But the lead pastor has to at least care. And oftentimes what happens is that he's so mindful about his congregation and keeping everybody happy that aren't millennials. You know, the ones that pay the pastor's salary, are faithful with their tithes and offerings.
The larger donors.
Are the ones that they're keeping the engine going.
Yes.
Oftentimes, it's really hard. The pastor almost kind of becomes like a president, you know, and it's one thing to like pat somebody on the head and say, I care, and it's different when you show it. And millennials are really, really good at reading past bull, and if they don't feel that it's genuine, then it doesn't make a difference if there is a group. It oftentimes will still lead to the same thing with them leaving.
So now I just want to piggyback off that. I understand what you're saying. But I don't find that millennials are very aggressive about relationships. So is it that the pastor is catering to maybe your larger donors or the people who can afford to tithe? Or is it that he's catering to the people who are most aggressive about their relationship with him?
Well,
okay, so this is the thing with the aggressiveness. Okay, if you're dealing with a millennial, like, you know, and the 5 years that I've worked and then the time that I've worked after being a youth pastor, what I realized is that a lot of these millennials, especially those of African-American descent, a lot of them are dealing with family issues, whether it be like the father's not in the home, they're being raised by their grandmother, or they're being raised by their mother, but their mother's like working full-time. What they often want to come off as is not really caring about wanting connection. So they're not going to be aggressive about making a connection. Now, once a connection is made, then they're aggressive at keeping that connection.
Right.
But they always come off with this, I don't really need nobody.
Right.
I can handle it myself.
Right.
So that's something that we kind of, as a church, if we're seeing people leaving, we kind of have to recognize that and then go after the generation. Because if you notice, in secular America, they go after the next generation because they're trying to get that consumer for life. They understand if they get them now, they can keep them forever. The church is the only, a group that if they're not like trying to come beat down the doors of the church, then we don't go after them, and that's one of the reasons why we're dealing with the problem that we have right now.
Okay.
I think, and I totally agree with that. And I think part of it is too, it goes back to being real. Like, if you really care about me, why wouldn't you come and speak to me, and why wouldn't you come and make that connection? And I think it's like DeAndre said, some of it is, family, and they're shy. You know what I'm saying? And so we have to be intentional on how we attract people and being creative to where you put them in activities or situations that cause them to have to get involved
Interact
with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's playing, a charades game of heads up where everybody's involved, and that makes them get out of their shell, and then they begin to laugh and smile and feel comfortable with one, being around other people that they don't know, and two, hearing what you have to say.
I like that.
The last thing I just want to say is what's so sad is that this generation, really what they're asking for, and this will be the last thing I say, is they're really asking for the Acts church. And it's sad that church nowadays does not reflect the first church in Acts.
And what do you mean by that? Because a lot of people are listening to you. They may not be real churched, and they want to understand what you mean by the Acts church.
Well, in the beginning, they were going, it wasn't like a church building. They went from house to house, and they broke bread, and they fellowshiped. They broke up the money that they had, and they met the needs of the people that they came in contact with. I would say the generation of Christian where we sit up in the church and we wait for you to come when you're at your lowest point. That time is over. We have to go to where they are right now and show them the love of Christ. Absolutely. And how much we care. If we wait for them to come to us, we're gonna be experiencing empty churches all across America.
Wow, now that's interesting.
I want to jump in this real quick, Pastor Jason.
Okay.
The two things that are just like really glaring right now are discipleship and the youth. And one of the things that's real key in this is the investment of time and resources. Both require time and both require resources. And any church that does not take the time and invest with discipleship and the youth, the younger generation, they lose.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, and so Hassani, why don't you chime in about all that's been said, and maybe you have something significant to add. I know you do.
I mean, I think that both pastors gave excellent points, but I think it's also important to realize that even though the church has its role in the decline of millennials, in terms of their church attendance, if we step outside of the church, there is a moral decline in our nation, and our culture has changed. It's funny because Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now unto him who that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we may ask or think according to the power that worketh in us." But the question becomes, what is the power working in many of our young people? When you think about their ministers, who are their ministers? Their ministers are Ariana Grande. Their ministers are Justin Bieber, Nicki Minaj, and Drake. Those are the messages that they're listening to day in and day out. And when you juxtapose that to one message on a Sunday morning, there's more working in them of a negative influence because they're in this world and in this society where we're constantly having these images and these messages and these videos and this music pumped down our throats that unfortunately that has more of an impact than what we're getting from the church. And if you think about it as a cultural war, we are at war. And so we've got to bring in a new culture that really ministers to them and addresses the issues that they are dealing with.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because I think about, people who say that they were Christians, like your Jessica Simpson, your Beyonce Knowles. I mean, all these people started off at your Kelly Rowland. They started off as Christian people. They came on the scene as Christians. And then they're so far removed from it. And so then other young people watch them and they see that they had identified with being a Christian and now they're doing whatever. And so you're right. These role models aren't consistent. Charity's right. There are not a whole bunch of role models who are consistent. The older people in the church who may have wisdom and who may be able to shed light and maybe come up with a plan, they're not respected on the same level as their peers. Millennials don't have enough money to produce efforts that bring about rallying, for spiritual involvement. So it's a really tough place for the church to be right now. It's so many dynamics. and you don't want to totally cater to everything that they want, because like Charity said, love is about obedience as well. But I can see why churches are doing everything and throwing everything at them, because it's like, what's gonna stick? So the question I have for the pastors and Hassani and Team Rock is, what are some solutions? What are some really good solutions that you can think of right now, other than we talked about cell groups, we talked about, bringing in, people their age to role model. But if the church were to do one thing, each of you, I would like you to say that could probably make a difference right away, what would it be, Pastor Burns?
I think just being consciously aware of what's going on is a good first step. Discipleship is very important, and one of the pastors has said that finances, can be an issue. In certain ways, yes, I do believe that if you just attempt and try to make a connection. The years that I ministered to young people, didn't really always have a real big budget, but what I did was I just left my door open. And the interesting thing is that during the time when I was there, the youth group grew because people started inviting their friends. I didn't have any flash. I didn't have any extra money to throw at them, but I just had an open door, a non-judgmental ear, and was willing to listen. And as time passed, more and more young people came in because the word spread that I cared. So I think the first thing we have to do is really realize what's going on, really realize how bad things are, and how we have to, we have a responsibility, and we have to get the young generation. So I think the first thing is just to care, and I think the Holy Spirit will start showing you in reference to where you're from, what neighborhood you're in, what to do in order to open up the door so they can come.
That's very good. That's very good. Just care. Pastor Moody?
Yes, I would say for the millennials, partnering with the parents and empowering them. And what I mean by that is, like, before they become millennials, before they get 18, parents are the greatest and biggest influence on a child's spirituality. And so if they can partner with the parents and kind of have some connection as to what is going on in the home, to make sure that there's a reinforcement, what's being done at the church, being implemented at home and being talked about at home, and they having these conversations. And I mean, because with that, you build a couple things. You build a family and you build relationship. So when you're meeting those needs, I think you have a great opportunity to have a great impact.
That's great. Okay, so partnering with the parents. So we got just care, partnering with the parents. Hassani?
A few years ago, I attended a conference entitled "Is the Church Relevant?" And one of the things that we determined was that the message is no longer relevant to young people. So I think that if we began to deal with more social issues and the things that young people are dealing with and take a biblical approach, we're able to meet them where they're at. And the other thing is this: you draw to you who and what you are. So if everyone in leadership is of a certain age, you draw to you who and what you are. So you have to strategically go out and find millennials and put them in leadership roles so that they can go out and reach other people, because when they see other people who look like them and act like them in leadership, it creates more of an environment that becomes all-inclusive.
Amen.
Okay. So we got just care, partnering with the parents, be relevant, and have people in leadership that look like the people you're trying to attract.
Absolutely.
Anthony.
For me, I look at it, I think mentorship is especially important, especially when it comes to young men. I think we all need mentors, no matter what age we are. But when it comes to young men, I think when I was a teenager, I was like, I had a car when I was 15, whatever. I was rolling. I was like, I know what I'm doing. I got it. You can't really tell me much. I wasn't out there doing bad stuff, but I thought I knew more than I really did. And sometimes you don't learn that until you get older. But I think things can help when you've got somebody older to talk to you, whether it's a father, it's somebody. You need a mentor in some way. And I wish our community, the church, would do more in terms of mentorship.
Okay, so just care, partnering with parents, being relevant, having people in leadership that look like you, and having mentors Charity.
I think for me, being in leadership as someone who is young, I feel putting millennials to work on something outside of themselves. When they have something that they can put their hands to, and they feel like who they are and what they have can be valuable to somebody else. It doesn't, I mean, they don't have to be a pastor, they don't have to be big, but just, putting a food together for somebody, asking, do you want to, should I pray for you? Or if they're not comfortable with that, just being there and giving people hugs. I feel like when people have the opportunity to use what's on the inside of them for other people, they're more drawn to continue doing it and being open to hearing more things. So I think giving young adults something to put their hands to outside of themselves.
Okay, so something to put their hands to that creates a need for them to get busy in the church and to give back and to give of their talents and their
not just to
energy.
the church, but just to people.
Oh, just people in general. Okay, all right. So then, and I want to kind of bridge everything that you guys have said, and I think it's important that we build a bridge between the generations, because I think what happens is we try to isolate one generation that we think is important, and then we leave out the other generation that is as important. So for instance, if you focus in on millennials, to me you're going to lose those people who can sustain your church. So then you have another issue. So it's just causing the generations to really respect each other and understand how God has created every generation to benefit the latter. Titus 2 talks about this great exchange between the older women and the younger women, and the older men and the younger men. And this is necessary for church growth and for the circle of life and for productivity. So I think it's focusing on the millennials because they're the next generation, but it's teaching them how to interact with the generation before them through mentorship, through partnering with their parents, through causing them to work on projects outside or inside the church that causes them to give of their talents. So just bridging that's what I would add.
Amen.
Okay. So, man, we've had a wonderful discussion, and this article, it's amazing that it hit CNN. I know the Christian Post has commented on it, and today we have commented on it, but I don't think that the church should feel defeated, and I don't think that we should buy into, because we have to remember, and Hassani says this all the time, is media is designed to set you in a certain motion to create the outcome that they want. And so I, in essence, would fight against thinking that it's the end of the church, that the church is not going to exist as powerful as God wants it to be, because I think God has a way of having the last word. And, no matter what it looks like, if we stay on course, we allow the Holy Spirit to minister to us as vessels, we stay in our purpose, in our lane, I believe God can turn around any statistic and create even a better statistic. So I don't want this article to be doom and gloom. I just want us to be aware of how the world is seeing us and what we need to do to, bring it to a better position. So I want to thank Pastor Jason Moody. I want to thank Pastor DeAndre Burns. I always want to thank our resident expert, Hassani Pettiford, who always brings us the real information, the best guests, and represents us well. And then, of course, Team Rock, you did wonderful as usual. Thank you. Don't forget, I always have my quote that I want to say that Anthony has reminded me. Don't forget, it is not your abilities that reveal your true strengths. It's your choices. Good night.
Say, be who you wanna be, come speak your mind, be you, get ready for the Nakid Truth. Dr. Kelly bringing it to you right on time, no half stepping, she's bringing you the Nakid Truth.